to another episode of Rec Talk. We have Andy Hallett from RecWired and Recspand with us today. How you doing, Andy?
Yeah, really good, thank you. Thanks for the invite, guys.
Thank you for coming on, taking the journey.
Happy for you to come on. Travelled far, all the way from Cape Town?
Yeah, I came in especially for this. I fly back after. No, I'm actually at the
Did you get on the jet that we sent out for you?
Yeah, it's very good and like nice helicopter transfer, lovely. Very good of the university to allow us to land there as well.
Yeah, they're good like that. I mean, when we put as much footfall into the university as we do. So, Andy, I mean, you're a highly experienced veteran in the old recruitment game, having spent a number of years over at S3, right?
Yeah, I think recruitment's one of those things where lots of people are in recruitment, but not a lot stay. So I reckon there's probably only a few thousand that have actually got more than sort of 5 to 10 years tenure in the industry, and pretty much everyone who does knows each other. So I started way back in 1999 at Huxley Associates in the City of London.
For the rest of the panel, I'll say the rest of the panel, but our behind the scenes team, they weren't even around in 1999, were they?
I was in year 9, but I look older than you. So I mean,
yeah. So this is a really.
I need to move to Cape Town.
This is a thing for me. So I was when I was doing a rollout of one of our tech products, S3. I used to say in the joke, I've been around since 1999. Some of the most of you are only just born there, and someone put their hand up and goes, I wasn't born by the time you joined the industry, and that's when you know you've been in it a long time. It's
horrible, isn't it? I mean, it's Nathan's birthday today, and he was born in 99. And Beebs, you were when
2004.
2004.
Bloody hell.
I was in the army in 2004.
So what's really scary is my son was born in 2007, and that's just made me feel really old. So and also that he should be getting a job really, really soon as well.
If only he knew somebody in the recruitment world who could help him with getting a job.
Yeah. That's a really good idea. If only I knew someone who was any good at it.
Yeah. There's what, over 1,000 people in the 1,000 recruitment leaders in the RecWired network.
We're coming up to 1,000 founders in the group. So
surely one of them could help, right?
Sure, one of those could help. So, but yeah, we're coming up to 1,000. We've been going about 3.5 years, constantly adding and shaping things, and we're growing quite nicely. We've just opened a new group exclusively for sales directors and sales managers as well.
To see that.
So we've done very much catering for the founders.
What was the decision kind of process behind that?
I guess it's around need. So one of the things when we set up RecWired, which is originally the Lockdown Leadership Network, so it started like all good things after a couple of glasses of wine. Myself and daughter were on a Zoom bar call on a Friday night, and I think we were the last two left on there, and we were like, we could do this. We could set up this group. And we basically said, right, okay, well, we've started a WhatsApp group. Daughter put a few people in, I put a few people in, and we said just add other people. And by the end of the weekend, we had 200. Very quickly, we realised that it had to be relevant for everyone. Mm-hmm. So literally, I mean, I had people like Russell Clements, who's the ex-CEO of S3, and daughter's mates are ringing them up saying, I'm a one-man band, I'm in here with the and that's never going to be good for either of those guys. So in terms of relevance and the like. So we split it down pretty much into 3 groups. You've got the startup group, 0 to 5, the dinghy. You've got 5 to 50, which is the bridge, your scale-ups typically, and then enterprise in recruitment. Anyone who's got to 50 heads, fair play, you're doing very, very well. And that's pretty much enterprise.
That in itself is a challenge though, isn't it? I mean, you're talking sort of 50-plus recruitment businesses. I mean, it's hard to even picture kind of 50 good consultants in kind of your local area, never mind kind of within your niche, right? So, I mean, you've been involved in kind of supporting and kind of scaling businesses from startup through to what, 50 plus heads?
No. Typically, I've not been involved in sort of taking people from that. I mean, that journey's a lot longer than I've been a consultant. So, but typically I've seen it where we've scaled up offices, countries, teams at S3 to that time. And even by the end, when we looked at S3, when we did our sort of market mapping and looked at opportunities, looked at countries, if we couldn't get 50 people into the country, we wouldn't bother doing it because simply it just didn't cost in. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of those people who have got to that, they're not overnight successes. You know, that's taken a good number of years, a lot of general organic growth, unless you're Levin Group and basically hiring 100 heads every quarter, then, you know, backed by some, you know, a different model than the organic method, it's still going to, you know, you're going to have to do those hard yards over a number of years.
Well, me and you had that, didn't we? We were sort of year one in our recruitment business, and Recruitment Entrepreneur approached us about kind of scaling up, and their initial model was literally just, guys, hire as many people as you can, get as many people through the door, just recruit. And off the back of
steroid injection.
Yeah, that's basically how they pitched it to us. Like, oh, we're a steroid injection for you guys, and you get yourself from where you are now, which was just the two of us at the time working out of a Holiday Inn, to let's get you an office in Birmingham, and you can hire 10, 15, 20 heads. And it turned our head, didn't it? Because we started off as lifestyle, and that kind of conversation made us look at it like, oh, mate, we could actually really make something of it. But then when you think about kind of the identity of your brand and your business, it just we rejected them in the end, didn't we?
It's hard to kind of balance that. Kind of the culture is so important, especially now, right? I mean, back then it was important, but I mean, right now, kind of work-life balance and culture are the main things that employees are looking for, and I think it's hard to kind of maintain a good, strong culture and grow at that kind of exponential rate. Do you know what I mean? It's almost impossible to get that balance. You know, you've got to.
You're giving into something. You're either going to give up your culture, or you're going to give up what your.
The culture either becomes growth and drive, and revenue, or it becomes no. We're going to kind of get this team established and bring in a handful more people, get that established and bring in, and slowly. I mean, what in your experience, what have you must have seen both sides of that. So
I don't necessarily think they're mutually exclusive. I've seen companies that the great companies are the ones that get it, and they get it both. And the reason they grow so quickly is their culture's so amazing, and they hire great people and they look after them.
Okay.
I was lucky to be a small part of a big machine and saw just how the original culture, the original DNA of the founders, Bill Bottrell, Simon Arber, just permeated all the way through the business. They were still in the business when I joined and left shortly before the IPO, but still, you could just see how that had gone through. And I would say I think you can have an amazing culture, and I think an amazing culture actually, breeds that growth. People will stay with you if they believe in the organisation. I heard a quote the other day, and hopefully I don't get this wrong, but
don't eat yellow snow.
Yeah, definitely don't do that. But it's effectively, sometimes companies outgrow people and people outgrow companies. The best ones are the companies that are growing and their staff are growing along with them, and they're on that journey. And I think I don't think every company does it perfectly, but there are examples of companies out there that have done that. That real sort of cultural, have kept the culture and managed to grow very well as well.
So if I'm a recruitment business owner of let's say sort of 4 or 5 years, I'm either let's take like a one director business who has kind of grown and maybe hired 2 or 3 people. What are the foundations and the building blocks that this person needs to then start thinking about to get themselves to that point where they're becoming a 40-50? Because at 40-50, really, you're probably going to be bought out by somebody at some point, aren't you?
You'd be surprised, actually. There's not a lot of deals that happen in the recruitment market. I think it's 0.2 of 1%. So your chances are actually being bought out are 0.2 of 1%. So it's pretty low. So yeah, absolutely. But I think the first thing you need to understand is why you're looking to grow. What does it give you? There are some great lifestyle businesses out there. There are some great individual businesses out there. So the most important thing is, what is it you're growing? What is it you want to get to? And when do you know when you've achieved that? And I appreciate that changes, and after you hit that peak, what's the next one? So for me, I think it's about being very clear on your vision of that, because you'll be tested along the way. You'll get to 4 or 5 people, the market will change a bit, someone will leave, do you replace, so actually, but if you've got that really clear vision that this is a 10-year gig, I want to get to this point, I want to basically be in this situation where then all of those decisions become really easy. Do I take funding? Because actually investment could actually, use your phrase, put you on steroids, could get you there faster. You could, having 100% of something that's worth less than 50% of something a lot more, for example. And also as well, investment can potentially give you advice, it can give you support that you need. And so I think there's no right answer for that. And it really depends on the individual and what it is they're looking to achieve.
Okay, so if the achievement is, let's say, in this particular scenario, I'm looking to build, scale, and then kind of take a step away from an active billing role and kind of just be a force effectively within my sector, be that a niche sector or kind of a generalist. Is there common denominators within that I can look at and be like, right, if I get this right, then I know that I'll start climbing.
Yeah, is there a framework that's like, you do
like a blueprint
you do
as such,
these 6 things and that's it?
Yeah, I think when I first sort of when COVID came, I started my consulting business on the 3rd of March 2020. I think when I actually started sort of ramping up the business, it was like this 2 days before lockdown, and I got locked down in the United Kingdom, so I was due to go back and go and live in Cape Town, but I couldn't. I wasn't a resident, so I got barred for 8 months basically. So I had nothing to do but start the business, and also as well, no one's spending any money, so no one's going to pay for, so what I did was just give away my time. I paid it forward, and I spoke to as many people as possible. And it's probably the best thing I did, because Andy, who worked at a 3,000-man business, what's he going to know about a company that's 1 or 2 people, hasn't walked in my shoes? And they were absolutely right. So what I did was I just taught, and there are a lot of themes that were similar, of spinning up teams, spinning up countries, but for individuals. And I pretty much came up with a framework that I think you need to be successful. And there are 3 things to it. First, you need a niche. Okay, if you're 1, 2, or even a 10-man company, and you don't do one thing repeatably well, then how are you going to compete? How are you going to compete against the big companies out there and you see some big specialists as well. So you need to be niche, and ideally super niche, and really, really good at what you do. The second thing is you actually need to know what you're shooting for and what you're going, because you'll be tested along the way, by good tests, bad tests, and you've got to stay true to that. And so it's working on what that endpoint looks like, what that journey is. And the third thing is, I call it the courage of execution. And it's around, are you doing all of the things that are right? So really good example, you should be posting on LinkedIn. You should probably get yourself a podcast. That you should be, have updated the website. Are you doing all the things? Now, most people gravitate towards the things they enjoy doing. They don't do the hard yards and the dirt, it's those things. And I remember it, and I remember it for me, actually. I'm like, I'm starting my own business. I can code a little bit. I'll do my website. I'll do something simple. And I was a month in. I'm like, I'm just not going to do this. I'm going to pay someone to do it, because I know I'm not going to get round to this. And I know if I was advising me, I'd be like, you're a consultant, Andy. You want to show your credibility statement, and currently you haven't got a website. So, okay, I need this, and do it. So for me, it's that courage of execution, that actually doing the things you need to, that may not often be comfortable. So if I would always score a business when I'm speaking to someone as a startup, those 3 things: clarity of proposition to their customer, clarity of where they're going, and lastly, that are they actually doing those hard decisions? Just before we started, you were sort of saying around, people starting up their businesses. Typically, the other thing I find as well is that most people who've been good recruiters can start a business. They can start one, they can bill. They have what's called, I describe as an away from motivation. So typically, they've left an organisation. They've either done it because they want to earn more money, or they didn't enjoy the environment, or they've been made redundant, or something's forced them to do that, and they sit there and they bill and they work hard and they get going, and because they've got to pay the bills, they've got to put food on the table, and they've got to get back to where they were. It's like, and then the big issue actually is then when it's and now what? So actually, that's why having that sort of North Star, that guiding point, is really important. And the sooner you can set that up, you'll just run through that barrier. But there's quite a lot of, I see a lot of consultants, a lot of recruitment startups end up being lifestyle businesses, not through choice, but just because that's how they landed up. If you to ask them then, if you could scale it, would you? I think some of them would. Not everyone would, and that's also fine.
Yeah, we know one or two people, don't we, who have kind of are always intent on wanting to scale, but just can never quite.
I was on the phone to my good friend Mark Hopkins the other day, and he was like, I'm looking at hiring probably next year now, and I was like, Mark, we've been speaking for 6 years, and I'll tell you, every year you say that. And he's like, I know, mate. And he's ex-Reed, and like he's managed multiple big teams and that kind of thing. But I think,
and he knows his stuff. He's a good recruiter. His clients buy into him.
It's very easy, I think. That's unfair. It's easier, I think, when you're a employee of a business who gets salary and all the rest of it, and then is told to grow a team, because the risk isn't on you. The risk is the only thing you could do is possibly like mishire somebody, in which case you'll get rid of that person and bring somebody new in. And the best case scenario is that person will come in and do great. When it's your own business and it's your own money or your investors' money that you're spending, you really do start second guessing every little decision that you make. And I think that anxiety piece is probably what puts a lot of people off, kind of going, if I just take my eye off my billings for even a week to focus on interviewing for my next 2 members of staff that I bring in, that's a week's worth of billings that I'm not doing. And I can't stretch myself that far. And then if I do it and I bring in the wrong people, that's not just a week's billings that I've put on the shelf, but also potentially a month or 2 months worth of salary as well, that I either could have paid myself or kept in the business that I've paid somebody. Because not everybody can run a business. Not everybody is a business person, right?
No, absolutely, and that's why it's important to have a 5-year plan. So, for me, when I looked at the cost of the website, I didn't, to use my example, I didn't look at it as X £1,000s. I looked at it as, actually, that's really cheap over 5 years.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be doing this for a minimum of 5 years. Probably a lot longer, actually.
Didn't you say that about recruitment when you first joined?
Yeah, it's interesting about recruitment. So when I told my mum I got a job in recruitment, she was like, "Oh, great! That's really nice. When are you going to get a proper job?" And actually, it was only when I think bought flat, parked a few nice company cars on the drive at home, that she's like, actually, it's probably all right. So she sort of got it in the end, but. Like everyone, I fell into it. So I had mates at Computer Futures and a friend at Progressive, and I just knew I could sell better than them, and they were doing really well. And
it's a big old pit, isn't it? The recruitment world that keeps tripping people into it. It's like a quicksand of the kind of the working world, isn't it? Everyone kind of just falls into it, and then they just get stuck in it.
It's a perfect career for someone who doesn't know what they want to do, because it's
sales in general is though. Benjamin Dennehy said that recently on one of his posts. He was just like, everybody falls into sales. There's not a single person that's like makes an active career choice to go into sales.
Well, one of the things
they
that he
fall
said,
into it, and then they stay because they're good.
One of the things that he said about that when he came on the podcast with a few months back now, he was like, most salespeople will stay in a sales role for as long as is necessary, because then they'll move into a sales manager role or a sales director role or into a role, but that doesn't involve them actively selling.
Yeah, they'll do enough selling to get off the phones or to get off the...
Yeah, they'll do enough selling to stop selling.
Yeah, you see that. I mean, we used to see that. It was almost like a game of Ludo. Once you got past that, you're hands off. Right? I'm
you
finished.
Hit the Holy Grail.
I'm pretty much done. And that was actually and actually, I probably non-billing manager, team manager, and director was probably a little bit too comfortable. When we used to look at the attrition rates of sales team managers stroke team leaders, so hands-on managers, billing managers versus non-billing managers, it was night and day different. We'd lose at S3 maybe 30-40% churn on that level, that sales team manager level, versus once people had got through to non-billing manager, then it was almost like, phew, I've made
the finish line. Yeah.
And the other thing and I've probably seen this more with external companies, that hands off billing managers, typically they're trusted within the organisation they've grown through. It's more difficult to transport them to other organisations because they've probably got the reputation, they've got the kudos, they've got the support, and therefore they've been invested in. But it's easy. It's less easy to port them. And my advice to anybody who's in a billing manager role, especially in this market, is I'd just stay billing as long as you can. Even if you cut down the amount you do, it'll keep you more credible to your people. But also as well, you can hold yourself to account as well a lot easier around it.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, it's tangible, isn't it? In that, we're still billing now, right? And we look at our guys and we're just like, look, we're having to run a business, a podcast, rec tools, all that sort of stuff. Yet we're still able to go out there and build money. So there's no argument for them to be like, oh, the market's changed, this isn't working, that's not working, because actually we're in it and we're amongst it with them. Which is why we never get the challenge from any of our guys when we say, try this. There'll be a bit of pushback because they're uncomfortable doing something. But it's like, we know it will work. I just don't know if I have the skill set to do it. And it just then becomes a little bit of encouragement to get them there. Whereas we've had it before where we've worked with non-billing managers. And it's like, you don't know because you haven't been in recruitment. You haven't been actively recruiting for the last 20 years. How are you going to sit there and say to me, send out paper mail shots? And how are you going to sit there and say, you need to run these reports and do this report and whatever? And it's just like, that doesn't work in today's world.
No, I think, and I mean, the job's changed so much. So when I was talking yesterday on a podcast, and they're saying you must have seen a lot of changes since '99. And actually, the thing that hasn't changed is it's still about the relationships, the methods, and the mechanisms of how you do it. The 360 role is just so much more complicated now. You've just got to be so much more organised. And actually, I think it's not as much about sales these days. It's about organisation and discipline. Whereas I think sales can get you by. A good salesperson will always win through. A good organised, disciplined person will always get through. If you can combine the two, they'll be your top billers.
Yeah.
But I think more and more it's actually around that organisation, that management, and process. Because it's becoming more of a process role. It's more. When I first started, people didn't always get the concept of recruitment. Well, you actually pay people to find people when you just put an ad in the paper like everyone else. So it was actually...
Think about when the first time you heard about Rec to Rec, that would have blown you away as well. I was like, hang on, recruitment companies who are paid to find people have to pay somebody to find their recruiters.
Yeah, it did blow my mind a little bit. So, but you sort of get that, and Rec to Rec's an interesting one for me. Obviously, I'm business partner with a Rec to Rec, so I've had a bit more insight into this world. And one of the challenges that I always hear is, well, why do you need to use a Rec to Rec? You could have just come to us for and it goes the same. Why do you use a recruitment company? Could have just gone the same. But what actually I do like about what Rec to Recs do give is it's not just around the finding; it's about the representation as well. So I'm terrible at negotiating my own stuff. I put myself as a good negotiator around other people's stuff, around companies' money, but when it comes to my stuff, I'm not great. So I'd love to be represented by someone who I knew was in my corner trying to get a bigger fee for themselves. Yeah. And so I do sort of get that it's about that, but it was a bit of a foreign concept when I first...
There's loads of... when Rec to Rec's done right, there's loads of benefits to it, isn't there? In the... as a recruitment business owner, I could go and find my own biller, but that's time and
money away from your own desk, right?
That's time I have to set aside, which I'd much rather give to somebody who is already 2 or 3 steps ahead, because this person already has a network of people, a bank of registered candidates that they're working with actively at the moment, or a kind of passive list of candidates who, for the right thing, would move. But actually, you're already 2 steps ahead, aren't you? So why?
And within our industry, we should be advocating the use of outsourced services anyway, because that's what we are. Right? We're an outsourced service as recruiters. So there's no reason why we shouldn't buy into what
Yeah,
Rectrix
I
do.
always find that funny when you got an agency recruiter, or an agency business owner that's all like, "No, I don't use Rec2Rec." And it's just like, it's just such a weird mentality. How do you sell your business then? Like, oh, I don't use agencies. I don't use agencies. It's just You're an outsourced service that won't use an outsourced service.
Yeah.
It makes very little sense.
So Andy, going back to your framework then. So obviously we've got the North Star then. So the recruitment businesses, excuse me, the recruitment business is looking to grow over the next sort of 4 or 5 years, and I've got a plan in my head that I don't know. My reasons for growth is that I want to make my industry a better place. I want to hire a few people. I want to get myself to a point where I'm now leading a reasonable sized business, and that gives me my kicks, right? So my reasons for scaling are exactly that. So I've got my North Star. Now, having that kind of goal isn't kind of that's almost a target, right? What's the steps that I need to then start putting into place to start putting myself in a situation where I can achieve that?
Yeah, so along the way, you've got different inflection points. So, there'll be around at what point do I get an office? At what point do I hire? At what point do I, if I'm doing contract, do I do perm? If I'm doing permanent, do I do contract? What point do I go internationally? So it's understanding all of those points, and the best companies I've seen put in tests. So they say at this point, this is what we're going to do. So when we hit this, this yield, then we'll open this, then we'll do this. When we've got the right person to do this, we will do this. And they're just very, very planned and pretty military planned on how they're going to do that. And again, going back to that, they won't just see someone come in who might be able to help them and might be a bit of a gamble. They'll just wait till they're certain about it. Maybe if we're going to the US, we build up that market from the UK, and we do it for 6 months. And until we've got X amount of revenue, X amount of customers, and then we'll start looking, and then we'll find where we should go, as opposed to having, I'm going to this place. Where's the market for us? So those are the companies that I see do really well. They're constantly growing, but they're very disciplined about that growth.
Right, so it sounds like a lot of it then is down to literally the planning and organisation, right? And being true to kind of what you've the kind of steps that you've set for yourself. Is that fair?
Yeah, 100%. And where I've seen people who've executed that amazingly, Sean Wadsworth with Frank Group was a really good example. Sean was really clear what he was going to do. He had he set that business up, and everything he did, the best piece of advice I could give to people who are looking to exit their business is what Sean told me, which was day one, start your data room. Every piece of thing, when someone wants to acquire a business, they want to know everything about your business. So everything you do should bear scrutiny to that, and you should be able to explain all your decisions, go through, and just make yourself easily buyable, basically. And he did pretty well out of it, so...
Well, in today's market, though, it's slightly more challenging, right? Because we've got being able to scale a recruitment business is a little bit hard, because the good billers out there are now starting to set up on their own, right? There's a lot of Rec2Recs out there, and there's a lot of there's certainly from RecTools we've seen an increase in incubator businesses who are offering good billers the opportunity to just set it up for themselves. So how would you navigate your way around that? How do you kind of...
I think it's always been the case. I mean, recruitment's a relatively low barrier to entry business. Probably when I think back, things like LinkedIn have, effectively made people's databases very, very similar in the same way that job boards and the CV job board databases did. But I think it's always been around. What's interesting for me is the various different funding models, and some of these deals that are out there with incubators. You're like, right, okay, well, actually, whose business is it? And are you just literally swapping one form of employment for another? Yeah. So I'd just be really clear, if you are looking to set up your own business, then be really clear that you're happy with the levels of certain I would generally avoid long contracts where you can.
What's a long contract in that term?
So, some of the deals you see lock people in 3, 4, 5 years on certain things. Now, that looks really attractive up front. A bit like giving away equity up front, but it becomes really expensive later. So, when you're not making any money, that's great. It's, cover up that. But once you start to really scale and grow, it's like that. So, yeah. The other thing I would say as well is be really clear what you're going to do. And I would say to people starting their own business, what are you taking investment for? Or what are you taking support and incubator for? That, what are they giving you and what's the cost of that? So if you actually had to just take out a loan and pay that cost, what would that be versus that? So you're saving equity, you're saving revenue turnover for a number of years.
And also, what not a lot of recruiters know about is that there are things like invoice finance and invoice discount available for them to fund their temps and be able to get cash flow in quite quickly. So your investment into your own business isn't actually that high, short of your own base salary. Because really what you're looking at is, if you want access to a job board or LinkedIn Recruiter or something like that, a couple of thousand for the year would probably get you covered with some advert access. But there's so many free to use softwares out there as well, because you don't need a big fancy CRM. There's loads of good free to use ones, and actually you could probably run it off an Excel spreadsheet to start off with.
The general trend is that you've got a big biller sat in a big business that's used to using a certain tech stack, and therefore almost convinces himself or herself that they need that tech stack to continue those billings, and because it's almost like they can't distinguish between the over reliance on the tech stack. Whereas historically that wasn't the case, because there's been a boom in rec tech and sort of the amount of technology that's out there, automation that's out there. Historically it was a lot easier to be like, no, all I need is my phone, my laptop, and somewhere to dump my data, and I can do this. Now it's a lot more like, well, no, I need an outreach plan. LinkedIn, I can't do it without LinkedIn. I can't do it without a job board. I can't do it without a CV database. You've got CRM providers that will say, oh, for startups, we actually fill your database with data. Yeah. And I need data to start with then. I didn't think of that. And then that kind of makes it all the more kind of enticing to then go with a incubator model of, you'll do my invoicing for me, won't you, because I don't know how to do that, and you'll do my credit control for me, won't you, because I don't know how to do that, and you'll do my accounts for me at the end of the year because I don't know how to do that,
and you'll offer me a CRM, and you'll offer me
and it's almost like
access.
The question that really these people should be asking themselves is, are you just fed up with your job, or do you actually want to run a business? You know what I mean?
So I think some of the stuff, we're partnered up with Workwell Outsourcing, who recently bought T-Boss. So they generally help those recruiters do that. But it's based on what you earn, as opposed to the whole, we're going to take equity, or we're going to take X percent, for number of years of your turnover, and effectively, they cover that. I mean, I would say the things you should outsource as a bit. Typically, if you want to be billing, okay, so the things you should outsource: accountancy. Yeah, absolutely. Get yourself either a good accountant, and there's specialists out there. I wouldn't necessarily go high street. I'd go to specialist accountants for recruitment firms. There's a few of them out there. I'd do that. Secondly, I think on the tech stack side of things, I think you can build a better tech stack for a couple of £100 a month than most of the big organisations with massive technical debt, because you're starting afresh and the world's moved on. And if you look at I was super lucky, because my last job at S3, I was doing startups. We worked on new ventures. We built a video product. We built 2 platforms. But the great thing we did was we were able to separate ourselves out from the organisations. So we weren't on their system. We weren't even in the offices most of the time. We bought MacBooks just so we could be different. Yeah. But things out there that we were able to deploy that day, like Slack. We'd use Monday. We'd use we'd spin up QuickBooks to do the invoicing, for example. So it was just amazing how quickly, unencumbered by that, we didn't have to go through the firewall. We just hook into Wi-Fi, and we just work on Google. So actually, new business, it's actually very easy. I was speaking to someone yesterday who's starting their own consulting firm, and just went through this is what you need: get yourself a decent accountant. Probably a Zoom subscription, Calendly so it all books in, get someone to spin up your website, probably go and do a social media course, business media course, one of the academies like Sean at Hoxo does, that type of thing, and then you're good to go. You know, you're absolutely, it's tried and trusted. There's enough people doing it that you can see. So I think from my perspective, people shouldn't be scared. And I think it's that imposter syndrome. I'm coming out of a big company, and look, I had it massively. Came out of a big company, and it's like, am I going to be okay? And it's a big, if I don't have, the system that I was using there, then, am I going to be okay? So apparently when lots of people left S3 and started up their own businesses, but Bond, who used to run Adapt, bought Sonic Software, Easy Access, and apparently everyone who left S3 just wanted Easy Access, Sonic Easy Access. But also as well, a lot of people that left, the thing they most missed was Apollo. Apollo was the search system that searched for candidates.
Right.
Still don't think I've seen anything that quite does what that does. But it wasn't the CRM. The CRM was Siebel and the CRM was Salesforce subsequently. But it was the most important thing was that search thing, that search machine that we built. So get yourself comfortable about finding candidates, because ultimately that's what it's about. As long as you're comfortable finding candidates, the rest of these things will follow.
But with the barrier being that easy to set up a recruitment business now, right? Why bother working for somebody else? Because the reality is, if you're even if you went lifestyle, if you went totally lifestyle and think, okay, do you know what? I'm going to open up a business and I'm going to work 9:30 after I drop the kids off, and I'll finish at 3:00 so I can pick the kids up, or I'm just going to do the odd hours here and there. I'll still earn as much as what I'm earning where I currently am. Insert big business here. Why bother putting yourself through kind of the pressures and targets of working for a big corporate or even another agency, when you could just do it yourself? And then does that not hinder then the opportunity to scale and grow for businesses already out there?
I don't think so. I think there's both options are valid. I mean, I worked for 20 years, and people look at me like I'm mad, but I basically have 5 different careers, and for me, that was challenging. I'd never have got to work on the projects I did. I'd never have got to work on the international projects I did. I'd never, get to work on, effectively building the strategy for 11,000 contractors, had, I started my own business. So for me, it was a bit like, I was probably at the biggest football team, but generally on the bench, as opposed to, running my own League One team or something like that, so owning my own League One team. So it was for me, and maybe an opportunity thing. A lot of people I knew went and set up and have been really successful. The ones that weren't never tell you, and generally they'll end up somewhere. But the thing I don't get, if I'm honest, is where people jump from the same job to the same job, same company. I don't get where people leave a business because they didn't enjoy the role, think they'll go to another firm. They don't enjoy the role, guess what, guys? It's probably not for you. And it's those recruiters that, for me, that move around. You see them, you look at their profiles every year, and they interview really well because they probably interview a lot. But they're the ones for me that I don't mind people who stay in roles or stay in roles for a long time and then move for progression. Mm-hmm. But for me, it's the ones that move around just
within a year, just decide. Yeah, I get that. I guess the challenge is now with what you were saying, Nick, before about kind of work-life balance, well-being, all of that sort of stuff is really at the forefront of everybody's mind. So is it possible now for an agency to kind of bring about the right level of talent to get themselves to a point where they're like, right, I can now scale and grow, I can get to 50, I can get to enterprise, I can get to a reasonable size for me to be able to kind of achieve the things personally, financially, however they want to do it, based on the talent pool that's out there. Is that possible still now, or do you think that part of the market has started to dwindle away?
No, I think it's really possible. I mean, there's examples all over our groups of people who've done it, so it is possible. I guess if I'm to say what marks them out is they're really clear on their strategy. They're really clear on what they do. They're very sophisticated in how they hire, and they're just very good at what they do. But and most of those have grown organically as well. They've done it steadily, but a great culture is attractive to people. When people come in and see an organisation that's growing, they'll join it. I think for me as well, an organisation. I don't know about you guys, but I actually learnt recruitment in the pub. So actually, everyone was a bit too busy during the day to help you, but you actually learnt a lot more by becoming part of it. And my advice to anybody either starting a business or starting in recruitment is just to immerse yourself. And it's not a job. You need to treat it like a lifestyle, like an industry, and until you get really good at it. And then feel free to, sort of back off, check out a little bit. But unless you're all in on it, it's a very tough job, and you've got to enjoy it. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that touches on your point at the start, isn't it? Where people fall into recruitment, generally speaking, and there's very few people who stay in there for 5, 10, 20 years, because you really have to enjoy it because of how high the highs are and how low the lows are. You really kind of have got to want to do it. And I think where we've lost most of our team was when we brought in people who we kind of took a punt on, didn't we? In that, you're not quite a recruiter, but we think
we sold the dream to them, right? And sold the opportunity to them. It's a tough one, because I think there's so many factors that go into making a successful. Well, what does that word mean? But a successful recruitment consultant, right? I joined recruitment and I had a ton of debt. We'd just got married. I had we were planning a family, and my motivators were, right, I get to work in an office Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 or 8:30 till 6, or whatever it was back in where it was. And it's uncapped commission. And that was my driver. I could have been selling goats. I could have been selling cars. I could have been selling yachts. I could have been selling people. It did not matter to me. What mattered to me was, is this a vehicle for me to be where I am now and get out of the overdraft cycle and the credit card loans and all the rest of it? Is this my route out? And for me, it was. And then as I went through that, I was kind of like, oh, hang on, I actually quite enjoy being in a position where I've now cleared off what were my liabilities, and actually I've got money in the bank. That's a rare feeling. I'm not having to check the bill when I order, when I ask for it and stuff. This is nice. Yeah. And that continued to kind of motivate me until eventually I got to a point where that wasn't enough. The money was the money. The money's fine, whatever. But actually, I'm not feeling fulfilled in doing this. I want to kind of do this for myself because I've got a new goal now. But I think just because that worked for me, where I know where I went wrong in terms of the kind of people that we were interviewing and stuff, was I was selling them my dream.
Yeah.
This is what it did to me. This is what it did for me. It could do the same for you. And then you end up taking a punt on someone who you look at and think, oh, this person reminds me of me. Oh, they're kind of in the shit a little bit. And actually, what a great opportunity. And you do it for all the right reasons. And then they fail or they don't do well. And you sit there and think, fuck's sake. It's just not working. It's not working. Our hiring strategy is wrong and that kind of thing. But
you've got to have a reason to do it. And you're absolutely spot on. I mean, I remember when I started, I was on a 10K base. They did guarantee me to 12 for 3 months, though, luckily. And then they put it up after a little bit, bless them. But I was working in the City of London, so I was living in Reading, where I went to university, so sort of still in student mates' digs, commuting hour and a half each way. But at the weekends, I'd go in. I had my season ticket, so I'd just go in, and we used to code up CVs. So basically, what that meant was you'd print them out, and you'd take your highlighter, and you just put the skills, and then you'd go and key them into the database, because I knew that on contracts, I needed to have those contractors ready to go. So who's available? That's great, because I haven't got time to be doing this next week. I think the other thing that I found as well is the more you put into it, you get better at it quick. Okay, and you don't almost have time to think about it. And then if you're riding a recruitment wave, you've got some great incentives. Generally, you're surrounded by good, like-minded people. You'll enjoy it. The dip for me probably came where I was probably earning the most amount of money. Probably I'd come off quite a big success, and then people started to leave, and then suddenly it's like, I've got to rebuild. And I think the difference for me is that I just had great managers. Mm-hmm. I really did. I mean, I was hired by a guy called Mike Smith, who was utterly amazing. He became UK director. Gary Eldon, obviously at Huxley. Scott Fulton was my first manager when I started Huxley Americas. Natasha Clark, who founded Pathway, Steve Quinn, who was the CEO of the group and now runs a couple of businesses. So just all in all, fantastic people to work with, and you're always learning off those people. And I think sometimes people don't leave the organisations; they'll leave their managers. And what you're saying about it being their dream is super important as well. And what I found actually very different is maybe it's a generational thing, and maybe everyone says this when they get to my age. It's not like it was back in the day, but actually I think the people who are entry level into recruitment have so many more options now, and actually the bank of mum and dad seems a lot more generous these days than it did in mine. And I find that
I think it has to be.
Yeah,
it has to be.
But yeah, people can't rent, or they can't. But the number of my advisories, consultants been there 6 months, hasn't quite worked out. Sort of had the little walk around the car park, or maybe the formal thing, and they're like, "Oh, that's fine. I'm just going to go travelling then." It's like, right, okay. It's like they don't. So I would. What you talked about was right. Why do people need the role? Why do they want to do it? Because it will get tough. And I was lucky that when it did get tough for me, and when I wasn't enjoying it, I had some really good people who spotted that and moved me into a role where I was going to enjoy it. And actually, I wasn't enjoying it. I don't think people are enjoying me. I was lucky that they.
See, we tried this, and even then, it doesn't always work out, does it? We've taken people and gone, right, this isn't quite maybe doing it for you. Let's put you onto this type of desk, or in fact, let's move you away from recruitment and put you onto this sort of.
Or move you into recruitment.
And then eventually that route is essentially like out the door, because it's like, look. I think and you're right. They don't seem as. I mean, when we were that age, if I lost my job, which I did a number of times, I was devastated. Whereas they just don't seem to be that bothered. But I think there is a reason for that. I think there's a lot more to it. It's a lot more nuanced, isn't it? Which we've talked about on other podcasts and stuff.
Yeah, I think look, the truth of the matter is you hit the nail on the head in that you've got to want to do recruitment. It's too.
I mean, nobody wants to do recruitment.
No, but
not even recruiters want to do recruitment.
No, but
that's why they don't pick up the phone.
No, but this is the point though. The ones that don't pick up the phone, they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
But there are good consultants out there, and there are people like Steve Guest, for example, who still is an active recruiter, having achieved what he's achieved and doing what he's doing. He could have quite easily been like, yeah, do you know what? Gloves are off now. I don't need to do it anymore.
We still do it.
I'm going to hang up my mobile phone.
We still run active desks.
But that's
not because we have to, because we want to.
We enjoy it. Because
we could easily just be like, oh, do you know what? No, we'll just hire somebody else in and I'll just manage them a bit closer or whatever. We do it because we enjoy doing it. But yeah,
recruitment's probably one of the easier jobs that I had. I worked on a farm. I was a paper boy. I worked in retail. At least you don't have to work Saturdays in recruitment.
Yeah. I thought until he phoned me, right? Because we worked in banking together, right? And he left and kind of stayed in banking. Eventually went into recruitment. I left banking and went into the motor trade selling cars, right? So my entire sales life has been mobile phone sales, which was Saturdays, Sundays, and bank holidays and all that sort of stuff. Car sales, or even banking was Saturdays weekends, and all that sort of stuff, and then car sales was every single day that you can possibly spare. To the point where I'd have to go in on my days off to hand over cars because you wouldn't trust that somebody was going to do it for you. So he calls me the one day and he's like, "Mate, do you want to go for a beer?" And I'm like, "Nah, it's Saturday, bro. I've got to put the cars away still. It's like 7 o'clock. I've got to put the cars away, and then I got work tomorrow as well." He was like, "On a Sunday?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Come and do recruitment. It's business hours, Monday to Friday, 9 till 5 or 8 till 6 or whatever it was." And he's like, "You get every bank holiday off, you get weekends off, you get this, and this." And I was like, "There are sales jobs where you don't have to work weekends." And he was like, "Yeah, I'm in one now." And that to me was like, hang on, I can continue doing what I'm doing because I enjoy selling, but I can do it where I actually get a better work-life balance. And that for me is like my work-life balance already exists because I've given up working the weekends and the bank holidays and the New Year's Eves and the Christmas Eves and all that sort of stuff. Whereas I think in today's world, the expectation is no. My free time is my free time. Like I'm not prepared to give that up. I'm not prepared to work past 5 o'clock or past 6 o'clock. I'm not prepared to pick up the phone before I get to work. I mean, you've probably come from that time where you'd be on the phone while you're travelling into work or travelling back out of work.
Yeah, but that's because you want to. So I think the big change for me, I sort of saw was that there used to be a bravado, right? The top biller would be the first at the bar, and there was a kudos being first at the bar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now I see it's like the top biller will open the door so the guy with the company credit card can get through.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a change in terms of that sort of mindset. And I actually think I actually put the square blame at end clients who've driven value out of the process, because what's actually happened is they've driven a lot of the value out of it. It's a bit of a, fees being pushed down. There's obviously commoditization, so it's a little bit of a race to the bottom in terms of the ability to do a job. So I think in a lot of ways, what hasn't changed is the amount of billings. So even with the massive salary changes you've seen, recruiters haven't actually changed. That sort of average of like 120 a year probably hasn't changed in that in
Like at least a decade.
at least a decade.
At least a decade, yeah.
But that 120 isn't worth as much as it was
No.
a decade
No,
ago.
no. When everything else costs more. Yeah.
I remember having a chat at S3, and we were changing the commission structure. And if you looked at what the founders used to do, they'd make a couple of $100,000 a year and drive a Porsche.
Mm-hmm.
When we looked at what the actual recruiters did, they probably earned $35,000 a year and got the bus home, to their parents. So it's very much a changing. It has been very much a changing world, as as the market's commoditized, as you'd expect. That's why the best companies and the best billers are generally the ones that find that blue ocean, or find that niche, find generally that area of expertise where they're not up against everyone else, or if they are, they're very credible, and it's not as congested, and that's why you've seen the gold rush to the States. People have started their businesses in the States. My advice to people would be definitely look at the States. Why wouldn't you? The fees are higher, the opportunity is big, the competition isn't there. Don't get me wrong, it's not easy. It's really, really not easy, but
it's not easy here either.
But from a market, it's certainly not.
It's sort of, there's just more opportunity. There's a lot more people, there's a lot more businesses, and there's a lot less of us.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense not to. Yeah.
But and to be honest, there's a lot of people leaving the recruitment industry altogether as well, though, isn't there? Like, there's some really experienced recruiters that we know of. I mean, the likes of Dave Birch, for example, who was a really experienced recruiter for some big brands like Michael Page, Rob Walters, these sort of businesses. Totally left recruitment altogether, and within that as well, you've got other people who.
It's like gambling, mate. When it stops being fun, stop.
When recruitment starts being fun,
That's
stop.
it, yeah.
But there's
Don't
a lot of
enjoy
people
it anymore,
leaving.
Get out of the industry.
There's a lot of people leaving the industry, and did you see any kind of correction going in there? Do you think that will then introduce higher fees? Do you think it will add more value to what we do?
No, I think what you're seeing. I mean, the biggest issue recruitment companies are facing now is cash flow. Mm-hmm. So actually, what you're going to see is a correction in the market of. It probably started post-COVID. That sort of bump, low interest rates, cheap government money, everyone hiring, we're free, we can do this. And you saw, a whole number of firms basically bring in people to fill jobs. Mm-hmm. Now the jobs aren't available. And this started happening end of Q2 last year. And, when I'm looking at my advisories, the data was all saying your jobs are trending down. Oh, it's Easter, it's this. It wasn't. The facts were the facts. So the last things to wash through are placements and rev and billing. But it was in the post. You could see. And a lot of companies hired big. Potentially some of them overpaid. And now they're suffering as a result of that. I generally always look at what the big companies are doing because their data's on point. So if you look at Page, Walters, S3, they generally, I think they're ahead of the curve because they did their cuts a lot earlier than everyone else, and actually now they're hiring, which says because I think in line with what we're seeing, it's an improving market. But again, they're ahead of that curve, whereas I think a lot of people who are not experienced at trusting data, or indeed been through these cycles. I've been through 4 recessions in this industry, and it always ends up the same way. Everyone's just chasing the wave, but they're always 6 months behind it. So how can you get there? How can you be on point? And for me, it's about knowing your metrics, knowing your yields, knowing your data.
Okay. So, Andy, if a recruiter needs an advisor like yourself, or if they're in a position where they're like, look, I've got a direction that I think I want to go in, but I need somebody like Andy to kind of support me through that, how do they get in touch?
Well, they can contact me on LinkedIn, but what I would say about advisories is be really clear of what you want advice on. So choosing a strategic advisor, an NED, is a very personal thing. So work out where your weak spots are. One of the best pieces of advice I got was from a lady called Victoria Maloney, who's one of the best people I've ever worked with, and she went into consultancy maybe 2 or 3 years before me, and her advice is just stick with what you're good at, stick with what you know, and just be really good at that. And what I've actually found is that you actually, I've talked to people and they're looking for an advisor, and I'm not the best person, but I've put them. I know someone who's better than me in this area, and that's really, really powerful. But I would also say getting an advisor is to sort of cover your blind spots, what it is you need, and an advisor would also think of them more like a personal trainer. They should, if they're a good advisor, be holding you to account. So we talked about that. You say you're going to do this. When you're a business owner, you say you're going to do it. If it doesn't happen, you've got no one beating you up. Mm-hmm. Whereas when you're a recruiter, you've got your team leader beating you up, who's being beaten up by their manager, by their director, by the manager, and these days
chain of arse kicking.
These days the PE firm. So right at the top. So. So just be really clear what it is you're getting. But the other thing I would say is don't look at it as a cost, look at it as an investment. Because although an advisor when you're starting up or when you're scaling up will seem costly, in 10 years, if you want to sell your business for millions of pounds, that's going to be the best investment you can make. So I would say I generally, when I do prospect calls, I know the people are going to work with me because they're either seeing me as a cost, in which case the chances are they won't, or they see me as an investment to get to where they want to, and that typically is where I sort of see the difference.
It's a mindset, isn't it?
Well, we were talking about this before, weren't we? In that you've got to be able to go into any sort of meeting with whoever, be it on a podcast, be it a phone call, Zoom call, whatever, trying to get something out of that. And if your mindset going in there is, I know everything, there's nothing I can learn here. Yeah. You're not going to be able to advise anybody on that, and actually you're not going to last very long in kind of what you're doing, are you? Because you're going to be so blinkered in my way is the right way of doing it.
Yeah, I was asked by someone to go and talk to one of their directors with a view to coaching them, and I came out and just said, they can't be coached. It's just like they won't listen to me. And I don't want to spend my time just wasting your money. It's
bang your head against the wall, aren't you?
They won't. So sometimes I think the most important thing, being an advisor is, well, you have to love it. So in the same way you have to enjoy recruitment, you have to enjoy the people you're advising, and you have to believe in their journey as well, because you can't sit there and fake that. You've got to believe in their journey. You've got to be with them as one, and you've got to, for me as well, you've got to just.
You've got to be invested in that brand just as much as they're invested in you, right?
100%.
Yeah. So, have you got capacity to take on new clients?
You know what? All good advisors say there's always room for one. So, I mean, generally, I've got a mixture of retain and projects. So, as projects roll off, I'm generally been very lucky that I've always been pretty full. So, but if I've not got capacity, then there's some really good people in the industry I can always put
you're
people in
connected
touch.
enough to be able to.
And we will be at RecWired building an NED panel. We've got a few on board already, and we'll be announcing that. But we've got some really credible NEDs who are literally brilliant in their space. Yeah. So we'll be doing similar to this. We're going to be doing some more of the podcasts that we do, and people can listen in to get that advice.
Brilliant.
Are you looking, guys? Do you need some support, some advice?
We need all the support anybody can give us. God knows how we've lasted this long.
So
wing a prayer.
Maybe I'll do a session on scaling up for you.
Yeah, we're happy to have that.
How about winding down?
No, you don't want to do that at the moment. So a fair few doing that. So
we'll be the 0.2 in that 1%.
Yeah.
If you've got a really clear reason, I mean, it's really interesting.
I just don't want to do this anymore.
Well, you want to live out in the wilderness in a cabin somewhere.
Get me off the hamster wheel.
But I really enjoy what you're doing with the actual, getting in the studio, the rec talk, and I think going back to that point around discipline, I think a lot of people will start doing this, or they'll start doing a podcast, or they'll start posting on LinkedIn. They just give up. You've got to, you're probably getting the numbers you are now because, and everyone gets better and better. Everyone gets easier and easier.
That's right. No, that's right. No. Well, look, really appreciate you making the journey today.
Likewise, gents.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Cheers, Andy.